Hello to each and everyone. So, for the assigned topic of our group, we have the population growth and poverty. Now, let me tell you what is population growth all about. So, population growth is the increase in the number of humans on Earth. For most of human history, our population size was relatively stable. So, consequently, global human population rapidly increased and continues to do so. And why is that? Because people nowadays keep non-stop making babies without any family planning and family orientation. So with dramatic impacts on global climate and ecosystems, will need to be technological and social innovation to help us support the world's population as we adapt to and mitigate climate and environmental changes. Now let us talk about the population growth in Asia. We all know that Asia is not just only known for growing of rice, but also one of the fastest growing population in the world. The population growth in Asia means a drain on many resources. The more people there are, the more difficult to cope the problems in the society and hard to improve the quality of life in general. Because according to the research, rapid population growth alone cannot explain poverty. Bad governance, high wealth and income inequality, and weak economic growth are the main causes of it. But rapid population growth and high fertility rates, especially among the poor, do exacerbate poverty and make it harder for the government to address it. Yes, we could still look further on that, but still we need to define first what is poverty. Now, poverty is about not having enough money to meet basic needs, including food, clothing, and shelter. However, poverty is much more than just not having enough money. Like for the World Bank Organization, describe poverty in this way. Poverty is hunger and poverty is lack of shelter. Now, if you would ask me, what is the relationship between population growth and poverty? Rapid population growth is a critical national concern. It impedes economic growth, worsens inequality, and exacerbates poverty. A sound population policy must be part of good governance to promote faster economic growth, lower inequality, and hasten poverty reduction. Which means that poverty does cause population growth and population growth does cause poverty. Economic development means increasing control of both parts of the cycle, the ability to choose your family size and the ability to make a living with something more than in your hands and the hands of your children. So that's why we need to discipline ourselves, because if not, more people means an increased demand for food, water, housing, energy, healthcare, transportation, and more. And all that consumption contributes to ecological degradation, increased conflicts, and higher risk of large-scale disasters like pandemic. Now we will show you some examples of population growth and poverty, and that would be reported by Karel Joy.
Okay, so right now I will be providing you some facts about the population growth and poverty in Asia. So first fact, Asia is the largest continent in the world and nearly 60% of the world's current population inhabits it. It has the highest rate of growth with its population increasing 4 times in the 20th century. So Asia's population was expanding and its economy was only partially changing and its social transformation was very minimal. And growth rates are increasing as a result of declining mortality rates and historically low birth rates. So from 1.5 billion in 1955 to 4.2 billion in 2000, the population would increase if this trend remained through the end of this century. And in order to decrease population growth, the governments of the large Asian countries have chosen to discourage unintended pregnancies, which shows that lowering fertility rather than increasing mortality may be the answer to the growth problem. And the predicament in this issue is Japan can be provided as an example. Okay, so let us now proceed to the next fact. According to the World Bank, more than 320 million people in Asia live in extreme poverty, which means hundreds of millions of people are living on less than $2.15 a day. It is the standard economic definition of poverty. And they must buy everything they need to survive with this pitiful amount of money, including food, clothing, housing, and even the transportation. Although the term poverty is common commonly used to refer to a lack of material resources, like example, living on less than $2.15 a day. Poverty ultimately refers to the lack of opportunity as well, and there are many factors that operate against the poor on a daily basis. People lack the freedom to make decisions that will benefit themselves or their families in the long run when they are continuously fighting for survival. So, extreme discouragement might also result from this lack of opportunity or hope. So, on to the third fact, representing two-thirds of the poor due to discrimination in education and employment, women make up a significant amount of the people in poverty in Asia. So, women represent two-thirds of the poor in Asia. Economic insecurity is part of a cycle of disadvantage for women, often caused by discrimination or in employment and in education as well. And poverty magnifies this disadvantage by leading to poor health outcomes, limited decision-making power, and few opportunities for women to pull themselves out of poverty. Women in many countries do not control key assets such as the family home, property, and decision-making rights on the use of income, further limiting opportunities to break the poverty cycle. And when economies decline, women are hit the hardest with lowered migrant worker remittances, with manufacturing industries scaled back as exports drop, and with women retrenched, forced to migrate under poor working conditions, which render them vulnerable to exploitation as well as gender-based violence. So, the last and fourth fact, the rapid population growth and poverty in Asia are degrading the environment through the uncontrolled growth of urbanization and industrialization. The rapid urbanization associated with the population explosion and industrialization has created an imbalance in the ecology in Asia. It is the area where the proportion of urban population has increased faster than the world's average rate of population growth. Much of this population growth, it represents a shift of population from rural to urban. And when the population is large, it requires better infrastructure along with sanitation, transport, housing conditions, and other facilities. And in addition, the population growth also leads to negative impacts on the environment, such as increasing wastewater, household waste, and other industrial waste due to human has increased the activities of industrial production. So, these are the facts about today's population growth and poverty in Asia.
Okay, so we're done discussing about some following facts about population growth and poverty in Asia. So now, for the continuations of our report, here's the following cause and effect of population growth and poverty in Asia. But before that, let's first talk about the cause of population growth. So the first one here is what we call urbanization. So as we all know that the Asia covers a larger area of land, which also recorded as the continent who has contained a huge amount of population. So prior research reveals that the main cause of increasing population is urbanization, which was already been discussed by our previous reporter, if you remember. It is defined as a rural to urban migration of people due to many factors, such as finding stable job, earn greater amount of money, education engagement, and settled in a better environment. So other cause of population growth is the rapid birth rate. It defines as the extent increase in fertility rates and in the absolute number of births of newborn baby recorded every second, the higher the population rate it is. So usually when we're talking about birth rate, people will automatically point their fingers to those poor and marginalized community who have long been portrayed as reproducing recklessly and prolifically despite making the smallest contributions to issues such as environmental destruction. Birth rates have declined sharply over the past decades. Women in poor economies have much higher fertility rates than women in wealthier economies. Why is that? This is because poor women could not afford to gain higher educational attainment and cannot pursue labor market career and just settle for less. So the population growth and poverty is closely linked to each other. In what way? This in a way that the increasing population will basically lead to extreme poverty in Asia. According to World Commissions on Environment and Development, poverty is the major cause and effect of global environmental problems. So, on your screen right now is the cause and effects of population growth and poverty in Asia. Number one here is the effect of the population growth is drain on many resources. Why is that? So, the overuse of resources is partly caused by the increasing populations in many areas around the world. So, we all know that human as we are, we need food, clothes, shelter, and some energy to survive. We will always end up depending ourselves in our earth resources. So imagine the world where human population reached to its extent and ravish all the resources of the earth without thinking and minding what the future will hold. Without taking some actions, our world will be left nothing. So the overuse of resources by humanity without replacing it back brought a serious environmental effect not just on us but also to other life here on earth. Overpopulation depletes wildlife to dangerously low levels. Overfishing has ruined many formerly fertile fishing ground, and increased use of agricultural displays many wildlife animal species, sometimes resulting in their extinction. The second one here is more industrial and human waste. So increasing number of people means more industrial, agricultural, and human waste to dispose. It would also mean more waste in the environment. The more waste we dispose, the more diseases we might get. The greater possibility of malnutrition, the more health problems may produce, and an extensive global environmental problem such as climate change may occur. So it is understandable that having an extant human population may have an effect in our environment, not just in our environment but also in our health. The urbanization, the construction of big industries, and the transportations may produce different kind of waste that might also trigger not just our environment but also on us people. Those waste that were being produced and made by human itself will directly affect our health. It might cause malnutrition, diseases, and other threats to other life. So the third one here is the decrease in agricultural land. So the rapid population growth results in extreme poverty in Asia that may lead to one of our environmental problems. According to ISCOP, it is generally agreed that a number of the region's most acute environmental problems have arisen from the activities of desperately poor. Short-term interest leads to disruptions of environmental carrying capacity. So, knowing that the poor people will only depend upon agricultural sectors and livestock activities, this causes people to put relatively more pressure on the environment, more pressure on fragile land to meet their needs. So the over exploitations of natural resources and more deforestation just to strive for survival. And those poor people is just a victim. Insufficient knowledge about agricultural practice can also lead to a decline in crop yield and productivity. However, there are still people who is greedy for power and money. They are not already belong to the victims considering that they can provide their needs, but they still choose to use those natural resources for their own selfish desire. Okay, so last but not the least, the short-term decisions by planners or the poor policy making is also one great cause and effect of the population growth and poverty in Asia. It says here that an increase in population leads to corrupt administration, which in turn fails to provide quality education to all people, giving rise to unemployment, discrimination, and food insecurity. So most of the above causes of poverty in Asia are interrelated. In what way? So the urbanizations may lead to population growth, and the increasing rate of population may result to the decrease in the agricultural land due to people, specifically the poor, aims for survival. So there is what we call the over exploitations of natural resources here, and the poor governance also fails to provide sufficient health and medical facilities, causing health issues and making people unfit for progress. So it is clear that before the people of Asia can rise up out of poverty, the lack of fair and uncorrupted governments throughout the continent must be addressed.
So, hi everyone. So, here are some solution in population growth and poverty. So, one of the most obvious ways to decrease population is for people to have fewer children. Since we are kuan naman overpopulated, we have to avoid kanang magsigig panganak because the more nga nagkadaghan ta, the more pud ma-overpopulate ta, which is mapunta ta sa population growth. In countries where babies and young children are less likely to survive into adulthood. It is more common for families to have a larger number of children, since some here in our society, there are many families, big families, who are always kanang panganak without knowing what is right and good. So it also more common for family to have a children in places where those children might be needed to help with work. However, more children are also means more people to feed and care for. Next is the education. Population growth is one of the solution is the education. So typically leads to people to have a fewer children. If if we are a educated people or educated person, we already know how to handle a family. And of course, if you are ready to have a family, of course you are going to start with family planning. Kay there is a lot of young children involved in teenage pregnancy. That's why daghang kayong mga batan-on na ron nga naa na sa teenage pregnancy maong because they are lack of education. Mao po lang nakakos sa ato ang population growth. So education is the best solution of population growth because education teached us how to build and how to have a family planning. It is also important to consider the role of society and government in these matters. Some policies help provide access to education or family planning services. Yes, a family planning. Whilst others make it harder to people to access support, it is also important for young people to be allowed access to education about pregnancy and contraception so that they can make informed choices as they get older. So that they can also avoid a teenage pregnancy, kanang nakabalo na sila how to do because they are already educated. Next, governments can also offer tax incentives to families who have fewer children and can fund health programs so that the few children die in infancy. So, some of the governments sa outside country, sa lain-lain nga country, if you have two children or three children, ang government mo ay mo pay nila. If mula po na sila ana, sila mo pay sa government. So people also causes less harm if they are not over-consuming resources, creating policies that benefit the environment and showing people that they need to waste less while help to protect the limited resources that we do still have. So while in poverty, the solution of poverty is eradicating poverty through education. So we can also apply the education in poverty because as we know, as young children, as the people living in our society, we need to be educated. So according to UNESCO or UNESCO, if all students in low income countries has just basic reading and writing skills, nothing else, an estimated 171 million people could escape extreme poverty. So because of lack of education, dagan jud mapunta sa poverty. If all adults completed secondary education, we have could cut the global poverty rate more than half. Education develops skills and abilities, corrects some of the imbalances that come out of marginalization and decrease. Next is commit to climate change solutions and climate justice. Resilience against climate change is especially important and deserve its own mention. So according to the World Bank, climate change could force an additional 100 million people into extreme poverty over the next decade without any urgent action taken. So this is very understandable. Next is reducing poverty with resilience. Poverty happens when a high amount of inequality meets a high amount of risk. For instance, the Democratic Republic of Congo has suffered ongoing conflict since gaining independence from Belgium in 1960. This has left millions of Congolese vulnerable, either living in conflict zones or in displacement camps for both. When another crisis hits, like in DRC's 2019 Ebola epidemic or 2021's Mount Nyerag Nyeragongo eruption, people are much less able to cope because their resources have already been worth then. So, as we living in our environment, in our society, um, for me, the best solution in poverty and population growth is to be educated. Because if you are educated person, you know what is right, you know what is wrong, what is the better in our society, especially in our environment, because as we know that this is our own good, and that is the the solution of population growth and poverty. Thank you.